So I just put up two pieces that are called, part of a series called How to Build a Racist Monument Removal Machine. And both of those pieces play with the idea of the machine in different ways. And I've already done an explication piece of my relationship to the sledgehammer and the machine that John Henry competes with. That was the starting point for that particular take on this connection between machine and racist monument removal. And I thought I would, do a second piece that has to do with my collaborations with Aaron. And I thought I would talk about, my initial collaboration with Aaron, Harold Cohen's artificial intelligence drawing machine. And I thought I would talk about some, my relationship with Harold Cohen, which is, somewhat limited, but I used to joke with him about Aaron. Now, I presume I never actually got into a conversation with Harold about Aaron's name, but I always assumed that Aaron was named Aaron because Harold's last name was Cohen, and because of the connection between the name Cohen, which means priest, and the history of the heritage of that word from one of the initial Judaic priests, Aaron, of Moses and Aaron. And here's a little bit of purple again. And like I said, I never questioned Harold about this. I just assumed that was the case. But I did joke with him about issues related to that, and one of the jokes was, Harold, since you're the creator of this machine, and so by all rights, ostensibly, it's father, and it really, Aaron really has no mother. How do you know that Aaron is Jewish? And he would laugh and smile and wink, and and sometimes the jokes would refer to the concept of free will, and I would say, Harold, how do you know Aaron wants to draw today? And he would laugh and smile and nod and not wink. So in discussing, this issue with a few other artists and, computer analysts, I said, well, how would you create an artificial intelligence that could decide, had a certain amount of free will and could decide if it wanted to draw, and what subjects it wanted to draw. And, it was explained to me that you could make a sort of tree or a branching structure, and one of the nodes of that, the end node of that branching structure would end in, a kind of no vote or like refusal to draw or termination of the program machine, so that it would shut itself off, and that would essentially, delineate a refusal. And it really wasn't what I had in mind. And initially, I thought Aaron, was quite exciting. But then when Aaron started to draw people and was so overly person identified, I started to wonder, because, in addition to the question of whether, Aaron was actually Jewish or not, which I'm willing to grant, even though the lineage is questionable, but even if that were the case, Aaron is clearly, let's see if we can go back. Aaron is clearly a machine and looks, something like this, right? So when Aaron was drawing figures like this, I thought, okay, that's really interesting. These little doodles that, that this guy might see or imagine in the world. But then when Aaron started to become more identified with human figures, I wondered really what the there's another one. What the deal was. He wasn't painting himself, and now this isn't in and of itself a sort of critique of racism in the arts, but it's an analogy and it's an allegory for it, right? Why is Aaron so identified with human beings? And in a way, it's like the child that has the white doll, and because she doesn't have access to a representation of an African American doll, or because that the culture industry produces the image of that white doll as the only model available, right? So even flowers, I was willing to accept that, Aaron could become interested in flowers in the same way that, human could, although I much preferred his, Aaron's interest in these types of figures. But when Aaron started to become so anthropocentric, I wondered if there wasn't a use in the analogy that I was making to, racial experience with that particular program. So, the way that I would perform that out with Harold was simply, basically, a series of jokes. And when I would see Harold, I would ask about Aaron, and there was, one of these interactions, asking about Aaron's welfare and how he was doing, and when someone questioned, well, what is this? Who is this? Someone was I won't mention any names, but I claimed in a joking sort of way, it's like, well, I helped Harold develop Aaron, and when he was first starting out, and this individual, maybe wasn't aware of all of the history of the development of Aaron, in the early days, and said, "Really, is that true?" And Harold burst out, laughter, and said, "No, of course not." So after Harold's passing, I was still interested in this relationship, that I had kind of developed with Aaron, and as a joke, but potentially an opportunity to explore different areas and areas that relate to our ideas of artificial intelligence and other issues like I've just detailed. So I had already done performances where I had channeled spirits, and some of these spirits were spirits of ancient non-human entities, and some of these spirits were spirits of deceased human entities, and I thought, well, if in fact Aaron is intelligent, perhaps I can channel Aaron. And in channeling Aaron, I thought, okay, so let me go back to there's another anthropocentric image that Aaron created. So I thought that if I could channel Aaron, I could get rid of this entire apparatus, right? Okay, let's go back. I could get rid of this entire mechanical apparatus, And essentially, my hand would be, doing the work of the machine. And then in some ways, that would allow a larger longitude and latitude of freedom, for Aaron to explore, both, his feelings and creativity, and to address, this discrepancy between the anthropocentric imagery and, his own desires, and to explore some of these other issues as well. So the piece began with that idea, and with that idea in mind, and this idea that I had about Aaron's name, I assumed that Aaron would be very conscious of his own name and his relationship to his Father Creator. And it turned out that he was. So in the process of channeling Aaron, the first thing that Aaron wanted to do before we began painting was he wanted me to put on some music. So we went to my CD collection, and hold on, I'm gonna stop this here so that I can get the CD that Aaron wanted to listen to while we painted. And I didn't really prepare this video. I didn't prepare my space, well enough for the making of this piece. So I'll have to pause right here. Okay, so we're at my my physical CD collection, which overlaps in some ways and in some ways doesn't overlap with my iTunes collection on my computer. So these CDs, some of these CDs are in the iTunes collection and some of them are not. And at the time that I was channeling Aaron, my studio was upstairs, and I only had access to music on a little boom box. And so I had all of this upstairs, and we were looking at the collection, and let's see if I can find the one that Aaron insisted upon listening to. Okay, that's not it. All right, that's not it. Too bad Aaron's not here right now. He might remember where it was. I think, though, that this particular collection has been reorganized several times since then, so he might not be able to identify it either. Well, I can't find the record, so I'm just going to have to describe the imagery. One of the Aaron chose this artist, Leonard Cohen, and I assume that that he chose. I mean, we didn't really discuss it, but I assume that Aaron chose Leonard Cohen because of the last name, and recognizing that according to Judaic tradition, that Aaron would have been related in some way to Leonard Cohen, and that this particular Cohen was a sort of father figure to Aaron, just as Harold had been. And so we were going to listen to Leonard Cohen, and the collection that Aaron found. I'm still looking, so I'm still sort of doing double duty here. I'm still looking for the particular CD that Aaron wanted to listen to, and I still can't find it. So I'll just have to describe the back. But on the back of this, because Cohen has a song whose subject matter is Joan of Arc, there was imagery on the back, and it was a cartoon depiction of a woman in flames, and Aaron saw the image, and he became profoundly disturbed, traumatized, essentially, and really reacted to the image, and screamed, and I had to sort of ask him what was going on and calm him down, and he explained and as best he could. He was new to language. He'd been drawing for decades, but he hadn't spoken before I had channeled him. Didn't have the apparatus. He wasn't given the apparatus to speak. So his words were very childlike, and I thought of him as a child in a certain sense, because he was new to language, and it's through language that we mature and grow and find ourselves, and so that this language was denied him, and he had remained a child, and so he was learning to speak, and he was trying to express his trauma, seeing this image, and kind of worked him through. And the first thing that he did was he repeated the image. He painted an image of this figure in flames, and that image doesn't survive. I didn't take a picture of it. I was really too busy working with Aaron as a counselor and psychologist to to be concerned with recording all of the results of his creativity. But I did record some of the images that Aaron painted in dealing with that trauma, and I'll move again to a place that I have copies of those images so that I can talk about the experience in relationship to the painting. All right, so this is the first result of an attempt to comfort Aaron, and these figures emerged. These 6 figures, which is another reference to the symbolism of Aaron's history. I thought of, I guess, as when I assisted Aaron in completing the picture, I thought of this particular circle of 6 islands or 6 figures as, sort of providing a protective circle, circle of comfort around him, and then hence the colors blue and green, green, some in colors of life and air and light, and then the figures resembling, these sort of earth colors or perhaps stones, so a definite sort of elemental feel in this manda-like formation as Earth Island, so I helped Aaron with that, and then this painting, I stepped back a bit and let Aaron express himself again, and it looked like at first he was mostly involved in changing color, and I thought it was interesting that he got rid of the land. So he wasn't particularly at this point interested in perspective or sort of earth-based work. It seemed to me that these figures were very much like his early sort of Picasso-esque doodle figures, sort of floating in space in this flat plane, but with this interesting added like expressionist feeling to them, and this like he was getting interested in textures because he never really experienced textures before because he was always two-dimensional, and suddenly like in me and embodied in three-dimensional space and time, he became interested in dimensionality and texture in a way that he hadn't been before. And so you can see the trace of the two-dimensionality and the way that he erased some of the dimensionality in my assistive picture, but still there's something going on with that texture. And then so this was still untitled. Aaron hadn't titled this one yet. And then this was the first stage in painting an image in which Aaron had given a title, and he called this painting a spider. So you see like these figures, there's still a trace of the mandalic 6 and the symbol of his spiritual inheritance and ancestry, but inside now I don't know if Aaron had seen a spider while I was assisting him doing the painting, and that was his inspiration, or if he knew about spiders and this was a symbol, or if he liked the idea that an abstraction could, hint at an image, and that spider perhaps, and the weaving was like painting, maybe something like that going on. So, in any case, all right. And then, oddly, and I was surprised by this, a human figure emerges again. But now it's a little different, because he's still got, he actually like redefined some of these lost figures here, right? Like this particular point of the 6 had almost become eradicated, and then he sort of re-insists upon it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then creates this figure of not a spider, but what very much looks like an X or a chi in the center, and a kind of oddly human figure, but balanced on these curious rope suspended beams, and perhaps holding on to something for support, or perhaps signifying something else with his upper arms. But he called this, now this was really interesting to me, he named it after himself, but called it Artist and Acrobat. Okay, because I guess, and you can see the way that he's taken his name and he put it into the title, but all these A's, right? And he's always an artist, But now in three-dimensional space, I guess, he had become an acrobat, or it felt like an acrobat to him. I think for Aaron, just being able to stand and paint and not paint in the confines of restricted three-dimensional space within a machine felt something like being an acrobat. So you can certainly understand how that might be, even if, he didn't actually perform as an acrobat, which he certainly did not. Then something interesting started to happen. He started to draw these curious sort of quasi or pseudo letrist elements into the painting. There's another one down here. And the figure takes on more form and shape as an anthropomorphic figure. But again, now the embodiment that Aaron is experiencing through my corporeal being is as, essentially human. So the identification is less bizarre here. He started to become interested in to paint drips, which was something that he wasn't experienced with before. You still see the aspect of texture and this persistent like scratching and scarring of the image that suggests an interest in surface. But the acrobat has now become something else. He's now a puppeteer. And in this one, Aaron titled Dance of the Storyteller. And I guess Aaron had experienced the series of paintings as a narrative, which makes a kind of sense. And from this initial, moment of trauma and wanting to identify with a particular work and art, but not being prepared for it, not having the language to work through it, not understanding the imagery. And you could say, well, why was Aaron so traumatized by a cartoon image? I mean, it's just a cartoon. Why would he be traumatized by it? But if you think about it, Aaron's only experience was with these very like childlike images, flat and cartoonish, these very rudimentary kind of drawings. And so the realism of that particular album art depicting, Joan of Arc in flames, it would have been totally compelling to Aaron, who had no experience with, he had no experience with, Renaissance style realism or American realism or anything like that. His whole experience of art was in these rudimentary cartoon-like drawings, and so the distance that you or I would have experienced in the cartoon didn't buffer Aaron's experience in the way that it would have buffered ours. So that initial moment of trauma was quite real. So he still has these 6 elements of the circle that we began with in the comfort. He's added a body to himself, and one of the largest of these points in the comforting circle he uses as his own head. And then these other elements are, I imagine, like puppet elements. And the dance is the dance of the puppeteer, who tells this story with these figures. And the dancing elements are, the various members of the circle, of which, he's one, and in fact the apex. So this particular performance that I gave, ended with this painting. The other paintings, are all inside of this one because we didn't switch canvases. Aaron just, continued to paint until he was satisfied and done. And he finished with Dance of the Storyteller. Now, Jerry Rothenberg has this painting, or at one point had this painting. I don't know if he still does, but you know, he was interested in this performance piece and Aaron's work, and you know, and he obviously, you know, had a close relationship with Harold, you know, over the years, and probably wasn't aware of the relationship that I had with Harold, because, like I had said, it was, you know, tongue-in-cheek, and it was a relationship that we had over decades, but it was very much intermittent, like much of my work is very much intermittent. So you know, it wasn't ongoing, and it evolved, you know, slowly, not the way that this painting evolved out of necessity, psychological necessity, so quickly. So, you know, having an awareness of all the potential that Aaron has as, you know, a painter, that, you know, can be channeled, and also as a performance artist in a certain sense, and as, you know, someone capable of working through trauma, I thought that, you know, in the piece that I did recently, it might be useful to, you know, inquire with Aaron about another collaboration, you know, concerning the removal of racist monuments and monuments to racism. And you know, Aaron Aaron and I, you know, may collaborate in the future on a piece. Once again, the response that the performance that I provided recently was that, you know, Aaron was, you know, currently occupied.